And Victorian taxpayers will be subsidising the super profits made by private investors in Victoria's desalination plant. Documents sent to potential large investors in the desal plant boast of 3-year returns of 32%, even if no water is ordered by the state government. The reason such claims can be made is that the government has guaranteed regular cash flows to Aquashore, owners and operators of the desalination plant. The government won't confirm the amount it's paying, but estimates have put the figure at between $300 and $400 million. Last week it was full steam ahead on construction of one of the biggest desalination plants in the world.
We've come through this year, we've had average winter rains, but the combination of average winter rains, the great saving effort by Victorians across the state, but most importantly, these water augmentations mean that we can start bringing those restrictions down now, but most importantly, plan for a future which is absolutely secure.
What a difference a week of rain can make. Workers still moving ahead on the multi-billion-dollar project to augment Victoria's water supply. Only now the state's water storages are more than 44% capacity and growing. While no one is confident enough to call the end of the drought, the need for a desalination plant now doesn't seem as urgent.
We will only take water from this plant if our storages are in a state where they need to be supplemented by water from the desalination plant.
Will there be some years where you don't need it?
I'm sure there'll be some years in the distant future where we could envisage where we wouldn't be necessarily taking water from the plant. But I mean, who can predict? We can order anything from 0 to the full 150 billion litres of water that this plant is capable of producing when it's up and operating. The government has total flexibility in terms of how much water it orders each year.
Where there isn't any flexibility is in the contract the government has signed with the Aquashore Consortium, owners and operators of the desal plant. Under the PPP, or private-public partnership, the government has guaranteed an annual water payment to Aquashore, even if no water is taken from the plant. Premier John Brumby was asked last week what that annual security payment was.
As the honourable member is aware, we've released publicly the capital cost, the provision that's been made for operating cost, but in relation to any individual payments to the company, we've consistently said that they are commercial in confidence and they are not released.
Absolutely.
The bottom line is we have a desal plant here which the Auditor General says is going to cost $5.7 billion. And if the water is not required, taxpayers will still be required to pay hundreds of millions of dollars a year in annual or monthly payments for the privilege of having the plant.
These documents show just how valuable such an arrangement is for private investors. Macquarie Bank, advisor and debt and equity underwriter to Aquashore, has made investment approaches to select clients, detailing the sort of return to expect from investing in the desal plant.
Assuming completion at a 3.5-year term and a buyout of the asset at an 11.5% internal rate of return, we would be looking at a total internal rate of return of 32%.
This Aquashore document boasts of steady state-backed cash flows.
Victorian State to provide monthly payments primarily linked to the availability of the desalination plant, i.e. investors take no demand risk.
And this.
In the case of Aquashore, weak usage will not affect the client yield as the distribution is effectively guaranteed by the Victorian State Government, regardless of usage.
Taxpayers will be underwriting any risk that might have otherwise flowed to investors. And given that this is a $5.7 billion plant, that's a pretty extraordinary arrangement, but it's an arrangement that should be made public in detail by John Brumby. To do otherwise is to simply embark on a cover-up on what is, for John Brumby, increasingly a very embarrassing situation.
To the extent that investors are getting super profits, yes, taxpayers are funding that. What we don't know at this stage is the degree to which excessive returns are being delivered.
And do you think Victorians have a right to know?
Absolutely, yes.
Professor Graham Hodge has just completed a book on PPPs, public-private partnerships. He says Victorians won't really know how much they're paying for desalination water unless the government reveals more information about how much is being given annually to Aquashore.
Normally, to figure out whether the financiers are getting excessive returns, we'd give that task to an independent regulator. When we privatised electricity, we gave the task of setting electricity prices and putting a cap on those potentially excessive returns. We gave it to an independent regulator. The tricky thing about these private finance deals is that government essentially internalises that decision about what sort of returns the investors can get.
Aquashore declined an interview request, but in a statement given to Stateline, the company chair, Chloe Munro, says, "There are no super profits to be made here. We seek only a return commensurate with the risks associated with PPP projects of this type. It is standard practice for a consortium's financial advisors to canvass investors and provide a wide range of indicative returns, which are forecasts only and therefore uncertain." Stateline requested an interview with the Water Minister Tim Holding. He was unavailable.